Let's roll! We'll take this here cabbage and we're gonna turn it into something very special. But first, we're gonna prep the sides and the garnish. What I have here is a handful of oyster mushrooms, cause mushrooms and cabbage, it just makes sense. These are gonna get a very simple treatment. All we need to do is split them in half and throw them in some hot olive oil. A pinch of salt goes in for seasoning and to draw out the moisture. The oyster hats have a relatively low water content, which means they're gonna start picking up color very fast. Once they do, we're gonna throw in some fresh thyme and a knob of butter. And that's it. Keep it simple, these are delicious. For garnish later, we're gonna use some sunflower seeds, which we're gonna toast, of course, because self-respect and taste buds. Now back to the cabbage. You can use most types of cabbages, just make sure it's not too big. We're gonna split that into quarters and each wedge will feed one person. Your stainless steel pan is heated up to non-stick temperature when you splash a tiny bit of water and the drops start dancing on the surface like mercury, hence why they call this the mercury test. At just above 200 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 degrees Celsius, the Leidenfrost effect takes place. A liquid that comes into contact with a significantly hotter surface produces an insulating vapor layer. That prevents it from boiling rapidly and essentially makes it not stick. We can now add a splash of sunflower seed oil and begin searing our cabbage. From here on out, we're more or less treating this as a steak. Once the initial side gets nicely caramelized, do as I say and not as I do and use anything but your hands to flip the wedges. At this stage, feel free to throw in a pinch of salt. I didn't because some of the other ingredients are salty and I thought that it wouldn't need it, but in hindsight, I should have. Once all sides are seared, we're gonna start basting with butter. Lots of butter. And a sprig of fresh thyme. You know, just like a steak. We're using 100 grams of butter, which we're gonna start spooning over and into that cabbage as soon as it starts melting. Once completely melted and slightly brown, we're gonna add another 50 and another 50 grams of butter for a total of 200 grams of butter. That's a pack. Okay, everybody relax. As soon as we're done cooking the cabbage, we're gonna take the butter out and we're gonna use it for our sabayon. In the meantime, just enjoy the views and the smells. To check for doneness, a sharp knife would go in without much resistance. Once the cabbage is cooked, we can pour out the butter. We're gonna put that aside and we're gonna let the cabbage rest, just like we would a steak. While that's happening, we can start preparing the last element, the sabayon. For that, we're gonna have to separate 3 egg yolks. One way to do it is to crack the egg in the palm of your hand and transfer it from one hand to the other until all of the egg white slips through your fingers, just like your dreams. Another way, which is a little bit more advanced, is to use the 2 halves of the shell. We're gonna make the sauce on a water bath, so in a small pot, we're gonna add just about an inch of boiling water, and we're gonna put our bowl on top of that, so that the steam gently heats it up from below. In go our 3 egg yolks, and a tablespoon of white miso. We're gonna give that a quick whisk until everything is nice and smooth. To that, we're then gonna add a splash of apple cider vinegar. As we continue whisking, we're slowly gonna start drizzling some of our brown butter. It's basically like making warm mayonnaise. Also, did you notice how I tricked you into thinking that you're not gonna eat all of that butter? Haha, you are gonna eat all of it and you're gonna like it. I mean, that's also enough sabayon for at least 4 people. As you keep whisking and adding more butter, the mixture is gonna thicken up. Just like with mayonnaise, the more fat you add, the thicker it's gonna become. Resist joke. Once I took mine off the heat, I realized that it was a bit too thick. So I decided that I'm gonna loosen mine up with some lemon juice. You can use water, but I like mine with a little bit of extra tang. I mixed that in and gave it a taste for seasoning. I thought it needed a little bit more salt, so I added another teaspoon of miso. Now this is completely optional, but I like to add a little bit of honey and a dash of cayenne. You're not really gonna taste either, but you're gonna know they're there. Give it one final whisk and our sabayon is done. You can serve these individually, or if you're having guests, you can build a big sharing platter. Spread those beautiful oyster mushrooms around the cabbage, and then spoon the warm sabayon all over it. How's that for a money shot? Alright, that's enough of that roll. Don't forget the sunflower seeds and we're ready to munch. The Sabayon is rich and savory. It's slightly tangy and that little bit of honey and cayenne balance it out and give it an extra dimension and depth of flavor. And the cabbage is sweet and tender but still maintains a bit of a crunch. And the mushroom... Okay, you get the picture that I'm painting here. It's absolutely amazing, so go give it a try. Roll out.